By steadily trying to avoid the forehand, you eventually find your opponent's backhand. A one-handed backhand or a two-handed backhand. Incessantly solicited, backhands have become very steady and accurate. Yet for most players, the backhand remains a neutralizing shot. A shot used while waiting for an opening that the opponent's backhand might also neutralize. But times have changed. Increasingly athletic, both men and women players have developed a backhand which rivals the tactical force, precision, and aggression of their forehand. Confronted with opponents capable of moving around to their forehand on the backhand court, long considered the ultimate tactic, players have developed a range of counter-attacking backhands. Even with a strong forehand, players can no longer get away with leaving a part of their court uncovered. Backhands are better and better equipped to take advantage of any opening. Taking the ball early allows the backhand to maximize ball speed and surprise the opponent. In this way, the backhand becomes a real joker in neutralizing an opponent's attack. Now, the evolution of the backhand didn't take place overnight. At first, simply a defensive shot, whose principal merit was keeping the ball in play, the backhand imitated the flat forehand stroke which marked the era, and included a looping backswing and follow-through with no support from the other hand. What the backhand stroke lacked in power was often compensated by a certain style. By fixing the pelvis and placing the other supporting hand close to the guiding hand, players added nearly clockwork precision to a flat or slightly sliced backhand stroke. Efforts by the period's more athletic players to develop a powerful topspin backhand were frustrated by chronic inaccuracy. It wasn't until Donald Budge perfected a jumping strike at the ball that the foundations for a topspin backhand established a new technique, a technique which would permit Budge to capture the first Grand Slam in tennis history. As the stroke developed, the topspin backhand allowed players to find angles which had theretofore been impossible to play. Moreover, the topspin backhand allows players to hit the ball with greater force while keeping it in play, and this provided the basis upon which the modern game developed. At the same time, the two-handed backhand developed among top players whose athletic gifts included a certain ambidexterity. Especially among women, whose game was less powerful and more ambidextrous. The addition of an active supporting hand would allow women to considerably increase the speed and topspin of their backhands. But whether played with two hands or with one, the backhand's force depends first of all on shoulder alignment. The shoulders should at least be perpendicular to the net at the end of the backswing. Power is increased in direct proportion to the extent to which the shoulders extend beyond this perpendicular line. Foot placement is essential to proper shoulder orientation. And to maximize the amplitude of the backswing, the stance should be closed or even crossed. From this position, body movement is best adapted to the chosen technique. Either one-handed or two-handed. And best equipped to deliver the desired spin on the ball. The slice slows the ball down but extends its trajectory. It allows the player to adjust his shot with greater precision. For a long time, the slice was the principal, if not the only, spin applied to the backhand. It allows for quicker preparation, for hitting the ball while backing up or moving forward, for hitting the ball earlier, and also for hiding the shot until the last possible moment. Topspin, on the other hand, shortens the trajectory of the ball. Topspin allows players to hit the ball harder without fear of putting it out. A one-handed topspin backhand demands a larger backswing and perfect coordination to meet the ball exactly where the friction is most advantageous. Whether one-handed or two-handed, an effective backhand is physically much more demanding. Except when a slight topspin is used to obtain better ball control, in which case the emphasis is placed on accuracy rather than force. Few women players have the necessary strength and coordination to apply significant topspin on the ball with a one-handed backhand. But they use their light topspin with great precision to control ball trajectory in the court. By mastering the two-handed technique, women players have become much more aggressive, which can allow them to control the point by increasing the pressure on their opponent. The ability to apply effects on the ball allows a player to alternate a topspin backhand, a sliced backhand, or a flat backhand, according to the demands of the point. This variety is essential to successful backhand play. To apply topspin with a one-handed backhand, the racket head must be lower than the point of impact, and the Western grip should be used. To slice the ball, the racket is lowered directly on impact, which saves time. A hammer or continental grip is used. Topspin backhands are played with great force. The rotation and counter-rotation of the torso are often quite spectacular. However, for the sliced backhand, a shot of strategy rather than force, the shoulders should remain perfectly aligned in order to assure greater precision. With one hand, the search for a stronger and stronger shot is associated with the development of more and more topspin. The ball must be struck very early with a Western grip. The violence and friction required on contact is achieved by a racket movement which resembles windshield wipers. When executed by a relaxed player, the end of this topspin backhand stroke is often, well, flamboyant. This impressive rotation of the torso is also the principal source of the two-handed player's power. Just before making contact with the ball, torso rotation is accompanied by breaking the guiding wrist, which delays the arrival of the racket head, and when supported by the other wrist, creates acceleration. The shot can sometimes look like a golf swing. Despite its numerous advantages, especially for women players, the two-handed backhand presents an important handicap. It is very difficult to hit a backhanded slice with two hands, except as a drop shot. The low preparation for the two-handed backhand, so effective for flat shots or topspins, makes the top-to-bottom movement necessary for the slice very difficult, and renders the two-handed backhand slice simply a blocking shot. But a shot which can be used to manipulate the ball with strategic effect. That is why most players choose, even for a drop shot, to release the supporting hand at the moment of impact. In order to freely alternate backhanded topspins and backhanded slices, most players, following the example set by Mats Wilander, have learned to use a one-handed backhand when they want to slice the ball. While preserving the force of their two-handed backhands for flat shots and topspins, they can also vary their game with one-handed slices, whose different trajectories and rebounds offer greater tactical advantage. Men and women players who are less ambidextrous have found it easier to adapt this double technique of hitting the backhand. It is also a way to save energy when reaching for balls after a long run. The one-handed backhand allows players to hit the ball at a greater distance from their bodies than if they were restrained by the supporting hand. The difference in extension also allows for a greater freedom of stance. The short backswing of the two-handed backhand reduces the time it takes to hit a flat or topspin shot. The racket head simply moves forward and back. This technique favors making early contact with the ball as it rises, for women as well as men. Some players add a linking loop between the preparation and the contact. Others prepare only with their wrists. The quickness of the two-handed backhand contrasts greatly with the more elaborate backswing of the equivalent one-handed stroke. The complementary action of the supporting hand allows the player to better hide his intentions with a shot. Whether it be ball speed, ball trajectory, or the spin put on the ball. The two-handed backhand remains very unpredictable. But it would be a mistake to believe that the specific characteristics of the two-handed backhand make it superior to the one-handed backhand. For example, until he was 15, Stefan Edberg played with two hands. But his coach convinced him to change techniques, arguing that with two hands, he would never develop a successful backhand volley, the shot which would one day bring him the Wimbledon title. The same thing happened to Pete Sampras, who also abandoned the two-handed backhand in order to improve his volley. A strategy change, you'd have to admit, which quickly paid big dividends. In terms of ball contact and shoulder rotation, the two techniques present no contradictions. The most important differences lie in the shortened backswing, the use of the wrists, and sometimes a difference of grip for the two-handed backhand. Sometimes the guiding hand's grip on the racket closely resembles the grip used for a one-handed backhand. It can sometimes be a Western backhand grip. But many two-handed backhands are played with a guiding hand and a Western forehand grip on the racket. You mustn't think they're any less effective for returns of serve, aggressive shots, topspin lobs, defensive shots while backing up, or attacking shots played while moving forward. In effect, as long as a player stays in control of the point, everything's fine. But as soon as an opponent's well-placed shot requires the player to release her supporting hand while reaching for a distant ball, this forehand grip will only allow her to hit a defensive lob. For this reason, most women players keep both hands on the racket even in the most difficult situations, and only release the supporting hand on delicate shots like the drop shot. For high balls, on the other hand, the supporting hand becomes most important. When pushed to the limit, keeping both hands on the racket requires irreproachable physical conditioning. But it also develops a keen sense of footwork, necessary to use the two-handed backhand to best advantage. When the player has the time to choose the spot from which to hit his backhand, whether one-handed or two-handed, he aligns his feet, as we have seen, more or less perpendicular to the net, or sometimes slightly crosses them to obtain optimum lateral movement on the ball. This careful footwork allows dynamic use of the abdominal muscles to make contact with the ball with maximum force and efficiency. While hitting the ball, body weight shifts from back to forward, and the final impulse comes from the leg on the same side as the guiding hand. In this case, the player pushes off the same leg for the backhand as for the forehand. The impulse is simply less forceful for the sliced backhand. Conversely, When hitting a defensive backhand while backing up, the impulse comes from the back leg. Springing up helps stop the movement backwards and avoids weakening the shot. But in terms of effectiveness, nothing beats moving the body weight forward at the moment of impact, even if first you have to back up in order to hit through the ball. Disciplined footwork is essential to fully exploiting the potential power of the topspin backhand. An effective slice, an advantage as we've seen of the one-handed backhand, is the last remnant of the tennis of another age. An age when even the forehand was often sliced. The chopped ball may have disappeared, but with the development of the topspin, the backhand now requires the same athletic prowess as the serve and the forehand. Players can hit the ball as hard as they want, provided that part of their strength is engaged in creating friction from the bottom to the top of the ball, which will keep it in play. Any way of accomplishing this is acceptable. Some players even use a kick onto the back leg at the moment of making contact with the ball. This technique is particularly successful on returns of serve. But we also see it used on the easy balls of a rally. It too necessitates great body strength, but most importantly, coordination and balance. Balance is so essential that a player will often use his head as a fixed point in relation to his body, so that all the force of the shot will pass through the ball. And so today, even if bigger and stronger players would seem to have the edge, the variety, precision, and finesse of a strong backhand allows the advantage to swing to others whose talents can also be fully expressed. The powerful spice of the game is the volley. Fast courts are heaven to accomplished volleyers, as they are to top servers. Players can systematically follow their serve to the net, especially their first serve. And some don't think twice about coming to the net after their second serve. If their serve is strong and effective, their first volley can be decisive. But the apparent simplicity of such a volley depends almost entirely on the quality of the serve. The mastery of the first volley is important. When it is not a winner, the first volley should be long and well placed in order to put the opponent out of position. A weak serve will be met by a strong return, making the volley difficult to control. And if a crafty opponent has correctly anticipated the serve, the would-be volleyer just might find himself drilled by a ball as he approaches, which will make him wish he'd stayed back at the line. This is what happens with winning returns. Receivers win the point only by hitting an effective passing shot. Strengths are often equally matched in baseline rallies. If the balls are hit long, if neither player can open up an angle, and if both effectively get back into position while defending, the point can only be won by taking a big chance, or lost by an unforced error. The closer the player gets to the net, the greater the range and choice of his attack. And because he hits the ball high and close to the net, his opponent doesn't have time to reach the ball. An effective volley, therefore, can radically alter the balance of power between two players, as the ability to strike the ball close to the net forces the opponent to defend a larger territory. And of course, the drop shot volley must come as a surprise. Although we often forget it, the success of the volley is always linked to the effectiveness of the approaching shot. What is true when following a service to the net is also true for coming to the net in the middle of a point. But it's harder and harder to pull off, as racket technology in the last 25 years has favored the mastery of topspin. And the use of topspin, which shortens the trajectory of the ball, has enabled the backhand passing shot to become as effective as the forehand passing shot. Topspin allows players to strike the ball with greater force without worrying about hitting it out. It also allows players to open up otherwise impossible angles by playing short, down the line, or cross-court shots. And, last but not least, topspin has allowed players to transform the lob from a defensive shot to an attacking passing shot. The defender has never been better equipped to launch a counterattack, and this is what has made the volley such an exciting shot, a shot reserved for those audacious few sufficiently confident of their touch and reflexes to go for broke and charge the net. To those inventive enough to mystify and to neutralize their opponents. Coming to the net in the middle of a rally usually occurs when an opponent hits a short ball or makes a positioning error. Taking advantage of such an opportunity might require a lot of patience, waiting for the opponent to make a mistake. But a player can also count on the element of surprise, coming to the net when the opponent might least expect it. Another surprising tactic, this time before even a rally can start, coming to the net after returning an opponent's second serve. For women, who must cover the same ground as men, An effective volley is usually the fruit of the patient defense of a point. In order to come to the net under optimum conditions, women must be even more tenacious than men, wait longer to seize the opportunity afforded by the opponent's short shot, and then launch an effective attack. The resulting defensive lob or half lob allows the player the time to get to the net, where an overhead can bring the point to a stunning end. By positioning themselves well inside the baseline after a strong serve, they are ready to punish an opponent who hits a weak return. Sometimes they even come to mid-court and hit with the power of a baseline shot, and this can wreak havoc. With the development of women's athletic ability, some players now dare to come to the net while taking advantage of a weak second serve. Some will even follow their own first serve to the net. In women's tennis, the volley has returned to its original function, altering the rapport de force established in baseline rallies. Coming to the net becomes a strategic act, implying an appreciation of the risks involved and the self-confidence necessary to assume them. On clay, where the slow court makes the volley less decisive, men discover the same types of problems as women experience on faster surfaces. Under these conditions, only the best volleyers systematically dare to follow their serve to the net. And if their first volley doesn't score the point, it should set up the second volley by forcing the opponent to retreat well behind their own baseline. The second volley, played even closer to the net, allows the player to best exploit the open court. But if his opponent manages to return in his feet, the player will be reduced to guesswork when anticipating his opponent's shot. Following the second serve to the net is usually considered to be a particularly dangerous tactic on clay. These are the real adventurers, those who go for broke at every occasion, whose taste for danger is completely integrated into their game, which requires great anticipation and excellent reflexes. Even when they lose a point, their unrelenting confidence in attacking the net inevitably puts pressure on their opponents. And the margin between winning and losing a point at the net is often very thin. But as we have seen, most players, and especially women, are not equipped to systematically attack the net. Once a baseline rally has been established, they must wait to make an effective approach, which will allow them to come to the net in a position of force. In which case, the volley becomes a simple formality. But even then, they must be patient in their baseline rallies and wait for an opponent's mistake, prudently assuring that they not make one themselves. And a timid volley often results in a lost point. Coming to the net without assuming the inherent risk often results in situations best qualified as, well, bizarre. The timidity which used to accompany the fear of losing is now being replaced by the increased daring demonstrated at the top levels of women's tennis. They will advance to intercept a high ball before it bounces, hitting a baseline shot as if it were a volley. Once reserved for hardcourt play, these tactics are now increasingly seen on clay.
Mademoiselle Testou.
The lob is often the easiest and most efficient way to pass an opponent who charges the net. Or at least, to force him back to the baseline. Along with the mid-court volley, the overhead is the volleyer's essential weapon. In contrast to the serve, the overhead is not launched by a controlled toss. The player must reposition himself, gather his strength, adapt his reach, and smash the ball according to a trajectory he has not initiated. The smasher therefore repositions himself with his arm already cocked to be ready to strike the ball at the best possible moment and position on the court. In this position, the player's elbow and arm are in line with the shoulders. While the lateral position may vary, the extension to smash the ball is almost always on the same, nearly vertical plane. No spin is necessary to keep the shot in the service court. A stronger strike of the ball comes with a grip which resembles the forehand. But the wrist always plays an essential role, accelerating the speed of the racket head and forcing the ball down into the court. Leaping overheads, hit while moving backwards, are the most gratifying when successfully achieved. They require exceptional coordination and release. The backhand overhead is a shot which requires special ability, since the player, lacking the time to correctly position himself, must leap and strike the ball while turning around. The first attribute of a successful volley is simplicity, which takes different forms depending on the height at which the ball is struck. When the ball is played above shoulder height, it will usually be a winner. The backswing for a high forehand volley can be large and matches the slower, rounded trajectory of the ball. In order that the shot have the force to catch the opponent flat-footed and out of position, the player's entire body must be moving forwards when hitting. The grip can vary. It will be more closed the sooner the ball is struck. The same thing holds for a high backhanded volley. Players have the time to adapt their grip according to whether they want to hit a flat, faster ball or a slice to ensure greater control. When the ball is played between waist and shoulder, accent is placed on the sharpness of the shot. Fast reflexes are necessary to hit a volley at mid-height. There is no time and no need for a backswing. Most players will simply open up their wrist and then thrust themselves forward to hit in step. This is why good volleyers attack the ball as early as possible, and more often than not, slice it for control. The wrist is left relaxed in order to absorb the shock. The wrist remains firm enough, however, to keep the strings facing the objective. The opening during the follow-through is the natural consequence of the slice. The guiding principles of effective forehand volleys at mid-height hold for those hit on the backhand. Low volleys are when contact with the ball is made below the level of the net. Hitting a ball at this height necessitates bended and widely spread legs. Transferring the weight from back to front is still essential. Hitting such a ball demands enormous discipline and control of the shot, which is more pushed than struck. Here again, low backhand volleys present the same characteristics as those hit on the forehand. But the difficulty of hitting these shots is compensated by the fact that this technique allows players to surprise their opponents with a perfectly disguised drop shot. Doubles give good volleyers the occasion to demonstrate their technical and strategic qualities. Because even if the addition of the alleys makes the court wider, the surface each player must defend is considerably reduced. In doubles, it becomes even more difficult to make an effective passing shot against an opponent charging the net. The advantage invariably switches, therefore, to the team which can impose itself at the net in the best conditions. Doubles play is an excellent training ground for players, and particularly female players, to learn how to position themselves on the court and to develop their most delicate shots. To learn how to keep the ball in the center of the court until such time as an opening allows them to strike the ball forcefully at an angle to conclude the point. Doubles is an obligatory part of players' development, providing the opportunity to perfect reflexes and technique, while discovering the special thrill of winning a point at the net.
The high-performance serve. It's the most dominating stroke in tennis. What is a high-performance serve? It's the ability to serve with consistency, accuracy, disguise, variety, and power. In this video, we'll show you how to improve your serve by using the serving techniques of the world's best servers. As you can see, the best servers in the world have an endless variety of serving styles. But no matter how different their serves may look, they all have common movements in their serving motions that allow them to achieve success. The serve is a series of individual movements linked together in one fluid motion.
See, there's that big power. That's 125. He's cooked.
All of these movements are interrelated and important to the transfer of energy during the serving motion. They're also crucial to the rhythm and timing of the serve. When you examine the serves of top players, you'll find that they execute many of the same critical movements during 4 important phases of the high-performance serve. Preparation, loading, hitting, and follow through. As you now watch these high-performance servers, first, notice the relaxed, fluid movement of the serves in full speed. Next, with slow motion, focus on the common movements in the serving motions. High-performance servers are quite consistent in their preparation for the serve. Before serving, top players are relaxed throughout their body. They have a consistent serving ritual that's maintained throughout a match. During the preparation phase, servers begin to focus on the goal of the serve. For example, pulling the receiver off the courts. Or winning the point outright.
30-15.
They also decide on the type of serve they'll use, whether it will be a flat, slice, or topspin serve. They also determine the location of the serve. While there are many different serving stances, most high-performance servers assume a balanced stance in preparation for serving. Their front toes are generally pointed at a 30 to 90 degree angle to the baseline. This helps the hips and shoulders rotate during the loading phase. Top servers often lift their front toe, transferring weight to the back foot. This action helps to establish balance and relaxation. Some top players use a rocking action to transfer their weight from front to back. Either method is a function of style. Virtually all world-class servers start either with their weight on the back foot or transfer their weight to the back foot almost immediately after starting the serving action. The next phase of the serving motion, loading, can be viewed as the coiling of a spring. It begins with the rotation of the shoulders, then the rotation of the hips, and continues with the bending of the knees. This loading motion stores energy in the major muscle groups of the body. Top servers rotate their shoulders and hips to generate power. However, the amount of rotation varies considerably with each player. The shoulders will rotate more than the hips in order to create the coiling action. As the shoulders and hips rotate, the knees start to bend. There is quite a bit of variety in the degree to which players bend their knees. However, knee flexion is essential in the loading phase of the serve. When bending their knees, high-performance players position their feet for support. Stylistically, there are two basic foot movements players use: the foot up and foot back technique. Here we see servers using the foot up technique to bring their back leg up next to the front leg, creating a strong platform from which to explode up to the ball. The foot up style, or platform, will produce greater vertical force and a higher impact position than the foot back style. Players like Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi use the foot back technique to drive forward and upward toward the ball. Larger horizontal force is produced by the foot-back style. Both of these techniques are very effective. Also part of this loading phase of the serve is the tossing motion. Virtually all top servers will bring the tossing arm up to the side of the body, assisting the hip and shoulder rotation. The ball is held in the fingers and is now pushed up into the air with a fully extended arm. These factors help to enhance the overall control of the toss. Some servers use a straightforward and up movement, while others use a slightly more circular motion. Top servers toss the ball out in front of the body. When players are hitting hard, flat serves, they will usually toss the ball more directly above the serving shoulder. If they're using a topspin serve, as is often the case on second serves, they'll toss the ball over their head to help impart topspin. As a rule, the height of the toss should be only slightly above the fully extended racket. On first serves, Pete Sampras and other excellent servers toss the ball in almost the same manner for a variety of serves and placements. A consistent toss, along with the coiling action, allows servers to disguise their serves, forcing opponents to guess whether the serve is going down the middle or wide. During the ball toss, the server begins the racket swing. When the server brings the racket back, it's important to keep the racket face perpendicular or slightly closed to the ground during the backswing. This closed position helps keep the shoulder muscles relaxed during the loading phase. It also allows the server to get the arm up in the optimal position for maximum racket acceleration. High-performance servers use both the classic full backswing and the abbreviated backswing in their serves. In the classic backswing, servers drop the racket arm as they extend the racket head back well past their body. With the abbreviated backswing, servers don't fully drop the racket arm. They bring the racket head up before it gets past their body. The power position is the crucial transition point between the end of the loading phase and the beginning of the hitting phase. In the power position, energy is ready to be released. Notice the similarity in the power positions of all these servers, with arms, rackets, and heads up. A bend in the knees, rotation of hips and shoulders, and a tilt in the shoulders with the weight leaning forward. When players get into a good power position, they have a high probability of having a successful serve. In the hitting phase, energy is unloaded through a series of movements often referred to as the kinetic chain. This kinetic chain begins with the feet pushing off the court. The force produced during the leg drive should be such that the body is driven off the ground. The body now uncoils upward with the hips and shoulders rotating. When the server drives his legs upward, the racket is forced down from the power position and away from the center of the back. This is contrary to the old scratch your back serving instruction. Because the racket is away from the back and shoulders, there is a longer path to the ball. This greater distance allows the racket more time to reach maximum acceleration. The result is more power. As the server continues the explosion upward toward the ball, notice the player's head remains up. The upper arm is elevated. The elbow extends. And the wrist flexes as the racket makes contact with the ball. Top servers make actual contact with the ball slightly to the right of their heads. But this contact point often varies with the type of serve and style of the server. The last phase of the high-performance serve is the follow-through. Notice the upper arm continues to internally rotate, and the forearm pronates during the early phase of the follow-through. These movements help create high racket speed and align the racket for impact. During the follow-through, it's important for the lead or non-hitting arm to move down, close to the stomach and chest. This action slows the rotation of the torso, increasing arm speed and creating more whip at the top of the swing. It also transfers momentum from the large trunk muscles to the arm and racket. Top servers toss the ball out in front and explode into the court, landing on their front foot with balance. The vertical explosion from the leg drive propels the player into the court. The kickback of the other leg provides the reaction force that helps the server maintain balance on the follow-through. Let's now look at how these top servers execute these key phases of the high-performance serving motion. Solid techniques in the key phases of the serving motion are the foundation of the high-performance serve. Watch the serving motions of your favorite pros and closely observe their consistent preparation, their loading and unloading in the kinetic chain, and their balanced follow-throughs. When you're able to incorporate these biomechanically sound movements in your serve, you'll improve your consistency, accuracy, disguise, variety, and power. Now lock into your mind the serve, performed by the world's best players.
Delivery has become a player's #1 asset, particularly on faster surfaces. The advantage gained is such that nowadays it has become difficult to break an opponent's serve. On a fast court, a first serve hit at 140 miles an hour, and some can reach 170 miles per hour and more, takes 1/5 of a second to cross the net, and 2/5 more to reach the opponent. And if it bounces within 3 inches or so of the sideline of the service court, the receiver lacks the required time to execute a sidestep. It's an ace. But if the ball doesn't either reach this speed or arrive with this precision, the receiver can then get organized. Hence, return of serve can become a joker in the hands of a daring player. A joker which can take the trick. On a first serve, it is already considered a success if one can put the ball simply back in play, since the server can always make a mistake. Even the top players. However, It is better to try getting an edge on the return, either by forcing the server to play his first volley lower than the net, or by daring a passing shot capable of upsetting the opponent or even crushing him. Whether on a service to the center or cross court, to the backhand or to the forehand, by returning cross court or down the line, or even counter-cross. All these bold returns can seldom become winners against a strong first serve. But they do display the attacking spirit which should pervade in a good receiver as soon as a good opportunity presents itself. Elevation is the first step. The short suspended leap releases both physical and mental spontaneity. The height or the style of a leap does not guarantee a successful return. The timing of a successful elevation should be synchronized with the decisions taken while suspended in air. The decision develops into a split step, the foothold taking place as soon as the direction of the ball can be anticipated as it crosses the net. To have any chance of returning a first serve, anticipation is the rule for top players if they want to reach the ball. But anticipation is always risky. One can easily anticipate in the wrong direction. And faced with a perfect serve, even good anticipation might not be enough. On a second ball, the server should ensure a higher margin of error over the net and inside the court. That is when the returner finds the best chance of delivering a really aggressive shot. On the second ball, statistics show that good receivers score more often than servers. When aiming for an ace, the server also takes the risk of making a fault. On a second ball, necessarily safer, the receiver no longer needs to anticipate. He can move freely and even find time to go around to his backhand. The difference in speeds of service gives the edge to the receiver. These differences of positioning between the first and second balls are particularly noticeable on clay. With men, as well as women. The slower bounce on clay doesn't prevent serving winners, or even aces. But it requires faster service speeds, or greater precision on the service lines. Precision is a great concern in the women's game. The positioning chosen for the return reveals the receiver's tactical choice. A choice which the player sometimes tries to hide by moving at the last possible moment. A choice which could induce the server to a fault if he feels compelled to take a risk. There are famous examples. Without going to these extremes, a good volleyer will usually step forward on the second ball to be ready to hit it on the rise and take the net whenever possible. A weak second serve can provide the opportunity of playing an approach shot, thus obtaining a moral advantage. It can also be a way of putting pressure on the server and driving him to make a mistake. If the receiver doesn't go to the net, he can still hit an aggressive shot from his forward position. Even if it means stepping backwards when his return is not as efficient as he'd hoped. This forward positioning on a second serve often compels the receiver to jump in order to return the ball below shoulder level. This is one of the reasons why a baseliner will, on the contrary, step backwards on a second serve. Even if it means stepping forward for the next shot. Hitting the ball on its way down helps to choose the right height and gives more time for putting a maximum topspin with the forehand as well as with the backhand. Having more time for his backswing, the receiver can anticipate and move sideways so that he can unleash his big forehand, as long as he plays in the deuce court if right-handed. On a second ball, the server seldom dares aiming for his opponent's forehand, especially when opening his own court. But when the server dares, this anticipation can easily turn into an ace on the second serve. It is even more risky to go around to one's backhand when receiving on the ad court, especially if the receiver steps forward in the hope of hitting a winning shot. In any case, taking risks, though they may sometimes look extreme, is a must for the receiver who chases the break. He should provoke difficulties for the server on both first and second balls. Women are successful in doing so, since, unlike most men, they often have more difficulty in keeping their own service than in breaking that of their opponents. Their service efficiency is not up to the standard of their return. On a second serve, when not going to the net, it is mainly by force and by aiming at the sidelines that the receiver tries to take control. There is sometimes only a hair's breadth, or an umpire's mistake, between a point won and a point lost. Taking risks in the depth of the court and with the help of good ball control can also be worthwhile when the receiver is inside the baseline. This drop shot return can also be an approach for better court coverage. On the contrary, when put off balance by a good service, the receiver can even up the odds if his shot is deep enough. And eventually win the point. The tactical choices normally develop into different techniques. However, they all stem from the same basic principles. After his leap, the receiver lands on a wide open stance. Body weight is transferred on the leg closer to the ball while the foot pivots. This foothold will launch the stroke. At the same time, a rotation of the trunk will orient the shoulders. These pivots and rotations are essential for any type of return. On a first serve, the stroke is played with an open stance, on the right as well as on the left. On one side, the return looks like a forehand with a foothold taken on the outside leg. But on the other side, it differs from normal backhand, where the stance is usually closed. Or even crossed over. And with a foothold taken on the inside leg. If the ball is further away, a light adjustment is required. A kind of half sidestep is enough to find a good foothold at the right distance. If the ball is even further away, a dive is the ultimate chance to reach the ball under good conditions. Or under not so good conditions. If it is not already passed. This minimum footwork goes hand in hand with a compact shot. Taking advantage of the speed of the ball, receivers, men or women, don't need a large backswing. Lacking time, the ball is often hit flat. When possible, topspin is used. Or a slice, which can slow down or vary the game. On the forehand, a relaxed wrist can enhance a short backswing. A double-handed backhand is more efficient for returning serve, as long as the ball can be reached. Otherwise, it's mission impossible. A chop, looking sometimes like a volley, can secure the return. With the second serve, things change. Dealing with a slower and not so accurate ball, the attacking players have more time and can risk an approach shot more often. The receiver moves forward to take the ball on the rise. A side skip can be useful not to lose the momentum. Taking this risk, a good net player can control the game right away. On a second serve, one has more time to position oneself. Side steps help him find the best balance for the strike. Whether he moves from the center of the court or towards the center of the court. On the backhand side, the receiver usually has the time to take a classically closed stance. Having moved forward, the receiver has to deal with the kick of the second ball. It forces him to jump if he wants to stay aggressive. The return then looks more like a ground stroke. And it cannot be distinguished when the receiver is moved backwards. Returning then becomes merely a neutral shot. A shot with a spin, either underspin on the backhand, even for those who usually play double-handed, or more often topspin, can bring better control and variety. A variety which can, once in a while, include drop shots. A successful return of serve springs from mental alertness and physical readiness. The method may vary. For some, relaxing will help them anticipate. Others develop and cultivate personal rituals for stimulating muscles and mind. But all are looking for the same total concentration required for immediate response. When they succeed, they can at times hit the most spectacular shots. Shots capable of destabilizing even the greatest